Welcome to Flip Your Lid with Kim Honeycutt. Kim is a psychotherapist and executive director of ICU Talks, a mental health speaking ministry. This is a podcast about how to flip your lid and learning how to reconnect to who you really are.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. This is a really special podcast. We're pretty much fangirling.
Yeah. We are definitely fangirling.
Yeah. So, this is Kim Honeycutt, and I have my beautiful wife with me.
Hi, I'm Larissa.
Hi. Thanks for doing this with me. So, we have an amazing guest. We're so honored. We're so excited. We were so excited about this. This is important for us. He's a big part of the fabric of our personal story, of our coming out story, and us still being able to feel very solid in our walk with Jesus.
Yeah.
It's a big part of that. So we'll interweave that later, but we want y'all to know that Brian McLaren
is here.
He's in our house. Now it's through Zoom, but he's in our house.
Yeah.
So
I see him right now.
So hey, Brian, thank you for joining us.
Well, I've just got to say, ever since I heard your story, I've been looking forward to getting this time with you. It means a lot to me to be with you two. So Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So sweet. Such a good, all right. So we're just going to start here and then we will interweave our story and our fangirling and our love for him as we go, right?
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. All right, Brian, only guaranteed question when you hang out with us, which is what flipped your lid and what measures have you had to take to reconnect to who you really are?
Well, I love that question. The three best answers to that are, I've always been a person who needs and loves the outdoors. And I live in Southwest Florida, and anytime I can walk out my back door, and I have these big tortoises that live in my backyard, and they walk around, and I'll feed them a flower or a apple core. And oh my goodness, I just love anything that puts me in contact with nature. A second answer is, I'm a writer and a musician. So any chance I have to be creative is always recharging to me. The third answer is my wife and I are grandparents. So any chance we have to be around our grandkids also is one of those things. A slightly less dignified answer that is also part of the truth is I really love stupid, funny movies. So, I'm a fan of Weird Al Yankovic and Princess Bride and all of those, Tommy Boy, all of those just stupid, funny movies. I like them all.
Yes.
Do you think you like them because your work, you've written so many books and when you put it so that someone like me can comprehend and chew on it, it's still a complexity, right? Like you're tackling hard topics. Do you think that the balance of that is watching Tommy Boy?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that is great. So you have a new book out.
Yes.
Do I Stay Christian? A guide for the doubters, the disappointed, and the disillusioned.
Yes. Do I Stay Christian came out last May. And so it's been a very meaningful and kind of intense year getting out and talking about the book, mostly on Zoom, but some in person, and then just receiving a steady stream of emails from people, from individuals, from groups who have maybe used it in a study or whatever. It's been very meaningful and gratifying and sometimes heartbreaking as people share some of their story.
What was the impetus to get you to write that book? What was going on in your personal life
Yeah, Larissa, that's, one answer to that is that, when I was literally in my single digits, 8, 9 years old, I was a kid who loved science. I was one of those little boys who loved dinosaurs and stars and weather and, all that sort of thing. And so I had learned all about evolution in school and in the books that I read. And my church told me I wasn't allowed to believe that. And I just remember thinking, man, a few years I'll be old enough and I'll be out of here because this doesn't make sense to me. So I think my own religious identity has often been conflicted even from childhood. To my surprise, I ended up having a very powerful spiritual experience in my teenage years. I ended up that kind of put both of my feet on the path of following Jesus. And I became a pastor, did that for 24 years. And what struck me in my years as a pastor, and then in my 17 years since then, has been how many people who are Christian are really struggling staying Christian, how many are leaving, and how many of the children of Christians are leaving. And so this issue of Christian identity is a really big deal. And I should add, it's not just traditional Christians. This is happening among Mormons. This is happening among people would be surprised to know that there's a big defection in Asia from Buddhism, and many young Muslims and Jews are having similar struggles. So a lot of us are struggling with our religious identity in general and our Christian identity in particular.
So let me ask this before we go in, there was so much meat in what you just stated, but the part about being a teenager and something landed you both on your feet, was that something traumatic, or was it just an encounter with Jesus that became undeniable for you? Or both, actually?
So when I was like 13, 14, 15, I was pretty sure that I was going to end up an atheist. I still, I wanted to believe because that would make my life a little bit easier with my parents and my, relatives and so on. But a whole lot of that just didn't make sense to me. And what happened is some friends of mine who were Southern Baptist, and I was from a fundamentalist background that made Southern Baptists look liberal, and they had a lot more freedom than we had. And they invited me to a retreat, and I said yes. I had never been on a retreat before. Our church didn't have retreats because they weren't in the Bible. Although I'm sure you could find a way to justify them from the Bible, but we didn't do that. The only reason I went is because there were a couple of very pretty girls who I was interested in who went. And while I was there, I had no idea I was having we were being guided into what might be called a contemplative experience, but we were sent off into silence for a period of hours. And our job was to just find a place and be quiet in silence. And in that silence, I think maybe for the first time, I was able to pray about my doubts and to say, I'm not even sure if anybody's there. And then and what happened is I made that honest admission and turned that into a prayer. Later that evening, some friends of mine and I snuck out of the retreat, as young people often do, to hang out together. And sitting alone under the stars, I just felt this very powerful experience with Jesus, where I knew that God was love, and that was really what set me on a spiritual path that wasn't my parents or my churches. It was my own.
That's so good.
That's powerful. I feel the goosebumps on my arms. Yeah. In your book, one of your quotes here is, I used to think that things were real and change was something that happened to them over time. Now I think that change is real and things are events that happen over time. Change is a constant and things come and go, appear and disappear, form and fade away. Can you dive into that a little bit? What brought you to that conclusion?
Well, first, I'm so glad you would pick that passage because it's one of my favorite things. It was one of the favorite parts of writing that book, was getting to put that into words. Let me give I'll give two short answers. The first answer will be a little more theological, and the second a little more personal. In my years as a pastor, because I preach from the Bible each week, I over time began to feel that there was a big gap between what the Bible actually talked about and what Christian theology talked about. And I tried to figure out what made Christian theology different. And I became convinced, and still am largely convinced of this, that early in Christian history, Christians adopted Greek philosophy as their philosophical categories to interpret Jesus in the Bible. And Greek philosophy, especially the philosophy of Plato, and especially a certain school of people who followed a certain understanding of Plato's philosophy, they emphasize this dualism between a metaphysical world where nothing changes and a physical world where things change. And I have come to see that as being deeply problematic and very hard to reconcile with the Bible itself. So that's maybe the philosophical answer. The more personal answer is, I mentioned how big a role creation plays in my life. And what you see when you look at creation is that everything is in motion. Everything changes. And if God made a world full of change and God is against change, this just doesn't make any sense at all. So that would be the more personal reason.
One thing I think is so deep, and it seems to be in the minority, which I think causes so many of us to live as minorities, is even your experience as a teenager, it became personal. Like there was a concerted decision, like there was effort towards not having to believe as others believe. And, and I understand because I study neuroscience. I understand what happens in the brain. I understand the 5 parts of the brain when there's something traumatic that happens, and that we seek certainty from that, and that certainty in religion becomes dogma. And so then you can't leave what you believe, because if you leave what your set of beliefs, then you go into what the beliefs were covering in the first place. And so can you speak into, I know like so many people have left the church, and it's because like we're not allowed to have that transformative experience. Like we're not taught to have a transformation, even though Christianity is based on having numerous transformations to get deeper and deeper and more personal with Jesus. And so can you talk about how do we get here where people are not encouraged to be themselves?
So interestingly, sometimes those big theological questions like, is God okay with change? As opposed to, no, God really hates change and wishes everything would just be over with so he could get us in heaven where nothing ever happens again forever. Those big theological ideas end up translating into how we live our lives. So what tends to happen is people in religious settings where they think God is anti-change, then they become anti-change. Well, that would be fine if they were perfect, if they were already mature and perfect. But if we're anything short of that, then we need to change. In fact, that's really what the word repent means. Repent means change. It means change your mind, change your direction, rethink your life. And I think this maybe helps explain why a lot of our churches are very high in conformity, but very low in real deep transformation. And I'm sure, for you, Kim, in your psychotherapy work, you would see this, that people can invest an awful lot of energy in conforming to a social norm and conforming to a group's expectations. And that can keep them from growing and keep them from changing. And so it seems to me this is why, one of the reasons why, well, it's such a gift in both the Bible in general, but also in Jesus' own life and example, that the idea is we're supposed to be moving toward maturity. We're supposed to be changing. Growth is what this is all about.
It's a growth path. Yes.
Yeah. And you talk about that in your book, which is how we really fell in love with you and got to know you through the Suzanne Stabile podcast that we were listening to, and we'll tell that story in a moment. But in your book, Faith After Doubt, you talk about some stage faith development. There's 4 stages.
Yes.
How does that play into what you were just talking about?
Yes. Well, actually, that's they really it really fits together. I became interested way back when I was in graduate school, and I was a teaching fellow at the University of Maryland, where I was studying literature. I got some training in human development, and it turns out that there's an awful lot of research, including very solid empirical research about human development. We know about it with children. We know that children learn how to roll over before they learn how to crawl, and they learn how to crawl before they learn how to walk, and they learn how to walk before they learn how to run. And then it's the same with a lot of our intellectual and social capacities, that we learn things step by step. And when I learned about this in relation to just human development in general, I realized this really helped me understand my own faith development. And so over the years, I dug into over a dozen theorists in human development, and I tried to synthesize their different theories into a simple framework that I call simplicity, complexity, perplexity, and harmony. And simplicity is where we all begin. We have to begin with simplicity. But unfortunately, what happens in many of our churches, whether Catholic, Protestant, whatever, is that simplicity isn't presented to us as an important first stage. It's presented to us as the only permissible stage, and we aren't allowed to grow past it.
Yeah. In comparison to that with like spiral dynamics, would you say like that's like kind of going into the red and blue zone, like you can't go beyond?
That's right.
That is that kind of thing?
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. And of course, when people tell you that you can't go beyond a stage, it's not because they know there are other stages, and they're trying to keep you back. They don't even know that there are other stages because they've never been there themselves. And I mean, occasionally there are people who, in a sense, hold people down on purpose, and those people tend to be cult leaders and autocratic politicians and so on. And there's plenty of them out there in both politics and religion.
Yes. Brian, how do you deal with it? Like you're saying things and been saying it through your writing that allows us to, Larissa and I, to feel connected and grounded and be more curious towards relationship with God. And other people who most likely are in the simplicity zone would condemn that, right? Would come against you because you're calling out something. There's got to be so much criticism, right? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, well, first of all, as I'm sure we'll talk about when we talk about your story, about that criticism yourself. So, a couple of things I'd say. First, I didn't really, almost every idea I've written about over my whole career as a writer, I had those ideas back when I was in my 20s. But I was scared to say them, and I only let them out a little bit at a time. So I didn't get a lot of criticism till I was well into my 40s. That made it a lot easier. I think it's so hard to go through really intense criticism when you're younger. Well, by the time I was in my 40s, a couple of things had happened. First, I got to know a lot of the people, I call them gatekeepers, the ones who are out to, or kind of like watchdogs, bark and make a ruckus to say, this is a stranger and he doesn't belong here. I had gotten to know some of these people, and I realized that they were just doing their job. In other words, it wasn't that they were smarter than me. It wasn't that they knew more than me. It wasn't that they were right and I was wrong. It was just that they were doing what they thought was right. And when I understood that, I didn't have to get so mad at them. I didn't have to take it personally either. I was able to say, of course, that's how they have to behave because that's where they are. And they're trying to be loyal soldiers to their little community. And I could understand that. And I understood that in their mind, what they were doing was serving God and serving their community and so on. So that helped me not take it too personally and not be too intimidated. Obviously, I have an ego and I have insecurities like anybody else. And there were times where I was angry and wanted to strike back, or I was afraid or something. But yeah, I mean, in part, those things either break you down or you develop strength and maturity through them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I used to work for some of those people.
That's right.
Definitely rings true for me as well. And maybe we can jump into just how we got to know Brian through that podcast.
So one thing that happened for us, like we're later in life and came out. In our coming out process, you became part of a beautiful, comforting installation for us. And so we had fallen in love. And at the time, she was working at one of the largest national Christian organizations.
Yes, right? I was. So I'll just say the name. I was working at the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. I had been there for 16 years. Mm-hmm. And towards the end of my journey there, I knew I was going to be leaving and I knew I was planning to come out. But we started hanging out and things moved quickly, which kind of sped up the timeline a little bit. So I put in, my notice to leave. I wanted to leave on good terms. I didn't want any drama. I didn't want, I knew that I know their stance on, same-sex marriage. I knew that they would not be affirming. So I was like, let me just get out of here. So that was all happening kind of in the background before our wedding.
Right. And so we got married in Key West, Florida. And so our final day there we got married and had our honeymoon simultaneously. We decided before we got on the plane, we were going to put our post out there on Facebook, right? Which shows how old we are. We put it on Facebook. And that was our way of telling the world, like, hey, because I'm a psychotherapist, I'm known for that. I also am a founder of a ministry. And at the time the church I was there, I was one of the teaching pastors there. Mm. And so we put it out there. We asked some friends to monitor and to be our positive gatekeepers while we were on the plane and couldn't get to our phones. And we got on the plane and we turned on a podcast of you and Suzanne Stabile.
Yep. We listened to you and Suzanne on the way back to Charlotte.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was comforting. And this is what I want you to know about that. Because I do believe when we do the right thing for ourselves, we do the right thing for other people without meaning to or having to know that that's the beautiful byproduct. Because things you said on there came in later. Mm-hmm. Like being told that people left the church because of me, being told that my pastor at the time had to think about salaries of people because of me being there, what I was doing to impact the economic church. And you had spoken into that on that podcast. You had talked to that. I already had compassion for that. I already had empathy for that. Yeah. It didn't stop the fact that I felt like someone was stabbing me, telling me that people were losing income because of me. Because that's really not a true statement. It's really because of their bigotry, right? It's really not because of that.
Yeah. So it was like foreshadowing in a way. It was speaking to our lives in that moment. But it also kept coming back into conversation. We're like, he talked about that. Yeah. Like, let's listen to that again, Yeah. So thank you for doing that just for all the work that you do. But that particular interview meant a lot to us.
Well, maybe I can just say first, my heart goes out to you for what you both went through. It means a lot to me to know that, in some way my words or work was of value to you. You both may know this already, but I have 4 adult children, 2 in their 40s, 2 in their 30s, and my 2 younger children are both gay. My son is gay and married. My younger daughter is getting married in June.
Oh, yay!
And so. Obviously, this means a whole lot to me whenever I hear a story like this. In my own life, as a pastor, I grew up in those same kind of conservative settings that would have written you and my children off. I had this very, I thank God for this dear friend I had in high school who, our senior year, he came out to me. He was the first, I'm sure I knew gay people before that. I just didn't know it. He was the first out gay person I ever met. And I knew that my theology, or what I'd been taught at my church, which wasn't that much back then, we didn't talk about homosexuality. We just didn't talk about sexuality, except to say it was all bad. Right?
All of it is. Yeah.
I felt like part of my adolescence was coming out as sexual.
Great. That is great.
But that friend, I just knew he was a wonderful human being. And I knew that what my religious context said about him couldn't be accurate, which put me in a conflicted situation in the coming years, including my early years as a pastor. I always tried to be kind to every human being, but I also felt conflicted because I knew that what the religious people I respected and I felt part of, what they would say. And what was one of the blessings in my life, many people would know the name Tony Campolo. They might not know Tony's wife. Tony was a respected, wonderful author, still alive, although he's up in years now and he's had a stroke. But has been just a dear friend to me. A lot of people don't know that Tony's wife, Peggy, was one of the very early people to come out publicly in full support of LGBTQ equality. And Peggy once called me many years ago, before, like less than 6 months before my 2 younger children came out. And she said, Brian, there's a church led by a gay pastor, and he'd like to invite you to speak. And if you speak there, there will be a target on your back. And I didn't want him to have to ask you, and then you feel you had to reject him. Do you think I should encourage him to ask you? And I said, of course, I'd be glad to. So I'm so glad that I had already, in a sense, gone public in my support for everyone before my kids came out. So at least they didn't have that burden on them. But I would imagine part of your story has included not only your place of work, but also family members and friends who you felt that stab, as you mentioned. Yeah.
And even like internally, like being in those circles and hearing those messages, and then also knowing what's going on inside and trying to reconcile the two, took some time as well. But then, yes, of course, some friends and family that have been like more supportive than I could have imagined. And then some that have just ended.
Yeah. Well, and the grace and compassion we have for people, because we have our own internalized homophobia, right? Like we've had to deal with our, right? And so there's so much grace, but as Larissa and I talk about, and I'm sure you've experienced this too, like, and I feel like God went to the depth of hell to pursue me and bring me to an understanding that I'm worthy of that kind of love. And even with that, it is taking me more grace to remain a Christian than it took to become a Christian.
Oh my goodness, that's quotable right there. That's quotable.
Right. You make sure you say my name, 2 T's, Kim Honeycutt, 2 T's. Remember that. Right. But it's true. Like I love God and I love Jesus, and it's all about love. And I love preaching. I love reading my Bible and standing on the stage and sharing what God showed me. Like it's such a humble privilege, but to also know that the grace it takes to stay in it.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, so different.
Yeah. I think especially for LGBTQ people, that have been targeted.
And we still keep showing up.
Well, and I'm thinking, Kim, you in your therapeutic work, you would see this so often, but I think one of the really painful experiences I had as a pastor through the years is I had many people in my congregation and some in my family who were neurodivergent. They were on the autism spectrum, or who had various mental illnesses, whether it's a schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or other mental challenges. And they were in religious settings that didn't believe there was such a thing.
Right.
Or that told them if they had more faith, they would be healed. And I just remember watching people people who needed understanding and compassion be treated worse in the church than any place they could have been treated. And then to think that that's true of so many people in the LGBTQ community. But then I go back 400 years, 500 years, and remember the whole era in the Middle Ages when witches were burned and women could be accused of being witches. And then you think, these were probably really smart women. Yes. They were probably, many of them were Enneagram 8s and Enneagram 4s.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And then you just think, and they were treated, and some were tortured and killed. And it was because they were women. So
because they were women.
Yeah.
They were smart women who had found a different way to heal somebody or to do something, or they spoke out just about anything. And so then all you had to do was say they were a witch, and then there's reason to kill them, and no one questioned things.
Yeah.
And so there's a similarity now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was just, it's my mission. It's something so big for me about ending the stigma against mental health, particularly within the church. And that is the mission statement for ICU Talks, the ministry that we're a part of. I had someone come in just 2 weeks ago, and she's an amazing woman. She's been through so much, including loss of a child. And she's in a Bible study. Then they are teaching, you take it to God first. That we don't take enough to God. If you're depressed, you pray more, you do all this. They're showing videos that this woman said are from the 1970s, saying the same thing. They were now 40 years later. And so, of course, I was a little sarcastic and told her ways to ask the instructor about understanding parasympathetic and sympathetic and understanding someone's dorsal vagal, what that means. If I was in the class, it would be interesting because the neuroscience proves God created us for connection and also created us to go into fear when there's a threat. And so how do you tell me anybody that alone can self-regulate, get themselves back to a place that they are ready to go be a witness for Jesus? We're not supposed to do it that way. Why did Jesus have disciples? If we're supposed to do this by ourselves, to me, it's also contradictory, and people are dying from it. And my heart couldn't burn more for that.
Yes. Well, to me, that's such beautiful and important work. As you say that, Kim, I'm remembering in my years as a pastor, we had a young man who attended our church. And as often happens, between the ages of 18 or 19 and 29 or so, his mental illness, he had his first major episode, and he was diagnosed with schizophrenia and some other issues. And he ended up living with us for many years. And then and it was tragically, he got lung cancer at a really relatively young age. I don't know if he was 40 or in his 40s. And by the time it was diagnosed, it was too late. And so I ended up walking with him through his dying process. And I remember near his death, I was able to, probably our last real heart-to-heart conversation where he was still able to talk, And I said to him, his name was Jeff. I said, Jeff, I respect you so much. I've known you for decades now, and I respect you for so much. And he got this look on his face like, are you serious? Do you really respect me? I said, Jeff, I think it takes you more courage to get through one day than it takes me to get through a whole year. And I'll never forget at that moment. It was an absolutely true thing that I was saying. I sincerely, honestly believe that. And it was genuine, sincere respect. And I just felt at that moment how many people had made him feel ashamed, sadly, including some of his family who was ashamed of him. Sure. And so this is all important work, isn't it? And of course, this is so much of what Jesus did. Jesus went to people everybody else was shaming and telling to shut up and so on. And,
yeah, it's the absolute truth. So what do you think? just prediction, even if it's not 67 million people, from what I read from your writings and hearing you on podcasts, 67 million people have left the church during the pandemic. Do you see it remaining this way? Do you see people coming back and doing church differently? Do you have a foreshadowing, a forecast for where the church is going?
Yes. So this is, as you can imagine, Kim, a lot of people ask me this question. And I guess it's just because I get out a lot and because I've been at this, in this work a long time. But I read the same statistics that other people read. Of course, I do get into probably a lot more conversations with people across different denominations and so on than some people. But I like to say to people, I don't think it's a smart thing to make predictions if what people are going to do with that prediction is say, here's what's going to happen. Let me adjust to it. What I'd rather say to people is what should happen and how can we help create that? Does that make sense? Rather than adjust to reality, I'd rather us all play a part in shaping the reality of the future. But if I could give one piece of advice that's something like a prediction to people, here's what it would be. I would tell people, expect the opposite to happen. In other words, I think in the coming years, we will see uglier forms of Christianity than we've ever seen in our lifetime. And I think we'll see more beautiful forms of Christianity than we've seen in our lifetime. And this is where, when people leave ugly forms of Christianity, that's not a bad thing.
Right.
It's a good thing.
Right.
And until there are more of the beautiful forms, I wouldn't be happy if people were signing up, right? So that's why I think for all of us who can stay Christian, the big thing we should aim to do is to embody in our individual lives, in our families and friendships, and wherever we can in congregations, more beautiful forms of Christianity.
And what does that look like for you as you're saying, like kind of what's your vision for how that comes to fruition?
Well, I mean, the thing that we've already really hit on, first of all, is that if we would like to be in those more beautiful forms of Christianity, we will take seriously love as our prime directive. Love is the great commandment. Love is the new commandment that Jesus gave. Love is what Paul said is the only thing that lasts, even outlasts faith and hope. Isn't that interesting? Faith and hope and love remain, but the greatest of those is love. So that would be a start. A second thing I think that we're going to have to do going forward is we're going to have to stop putting the Bible on top and Jesus under the Bible.
Say that.
We have to look at the Bible. I love how, I think it was Martin Luther who said it, the Bible is the manger on which Christ is presented to the world. To let Jesus, the life, teaching, example, spirit of Jesus, really be center. That doesn't mean we throw out the Bible, but we stop using the Bible as a cage that we don't let Jesus out of.
It's good. That's good.
Maybe that would lead to the third thing is, so first we put love first, second we put Christ first, and third, we start reading the Bible like grown-ups. Because if we don't realize how the Bible has been used to cause such great harm, then we're going to keep reading it like children. And a sentence you mentioned, Larissa, my book, Faith After Doubt, a sentence I wish I put in the book that I didn't. I thought of the sentence afterwards, but here it is. Doubt is not the enemy of faith. Doubt is the enemy of authoritarianism. And in a sense, we have to free the Bible from authoritarian readings of the Bible.
Yes, good. So to go back your statement about adult, in that, and I did a talk at my church a few weeks ago. I did a sermon about emotional regression because we all emotionally regress, right? And my whole talk was about how do we go understand emotional regression, what it looks like. And again, if you are in a congregation that your pastor preaches at you, your pastor's emotionally regressed and you will stay emotionally regressed, right? Because people don't get preached at or shamed at and grow because you have to feel safe to grow. My point to everybody was, how do we go from a child of God to an adult child of God? Because that's such a different relationship.
Yes.
right? And so the idea of reading the Bible as an adult, which means it is studious, there is something behind it, there's more there, opposed to a life of convenience and simplicity, which goes back to your first date.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me too of your, Kim has said before that your emotional, how is it? Your emotional and your spiritual.
Yeah, your emotional maturity and spiritual fulfillment will never surpass each other. They will always be the same. So if we're in churches that are teaching against medication, teaching against therapy, then you are already stunting your spirituality and your spiritual growth just from that.
And here's where authoritarianism comes in a situation like that. That gets taught because religious leaders who care more about their authority structure are aware that if you get therapy or if you're on medication, in some way it might loosen their authoritarian rule over your life. And so these things are interconnected. Yeah. Good leaders want what's best for their people, and good leaders don't play God so that they assume they know what's best for their people. They are willing to listen. And
it's so true and so well said. And I didn't plan on asking this, and it's probably a mundane question, which as an 8, I don't want to ask you what everybody else has asked you, but I'm going to ask you this anyway. What are you thinking about? What are your reflections on the Asbury revival that's happening?
Well, I was part of the Jesus movement. And so I was part of many very intense experiences like that. And I know how valuable that is to young people. Right. So I don't want to in any way try to knock down something that's been deep and precious for people. And at the same time, I got an email today from a company that's trying to make money off the Asbury revival. And so they're selling the music of the revival. And didn't just happen there. You can buy this music and it will happen in your living room. So just this awareness that some very tender and precious experiences, that nothing is incorruptible. People can corrupt anything. And I would also say that in highly charged religious settings, over time we learn that a lot of manipulation happens and so on. So I'm very respectful of people's deep spiritual experiences. And I'm also sad when they're either corrupted or manipulated.
Yeah, I love that answer. Thank you for that. It just continues to increase my respect for you and your perspective, and that you're allowing it. It allows all of us to reach our own conclusion, which goes back to being a good leader, that you're listening and there's room for everybody.
Thanks.
So anything else profound, life-changing, words of wisdom for two women who are trying to make it as newlyweds that you want to say?
Well, hey, I just want to say thank you for what you're doing with this podcast, because when your voices go out, other people find out that they're not alone. And, I think we can all hope that 5 years and 10 years and 50 years from now, there'll be a lot less stigma and judgment and shame and blame shifting. And we're all in that together. And I'm so glad for what you're doing and putting yourselves out there. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
That means so much.
It means a lot. So we're going to put you in the hot seat. And it just means we're going to ask you some questions, and just whatever comes to mind first. You can hear the therapist in this, right? Whatever comes to mind first is what you say.
All right, I'll ask the first one. If you could have any superpower, what superpower would you choose?
Well, I'd like the superpower to stop global warming and abuse of the earth.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah, it's good. All right, so what do you want to be known for?
Well, because I've been a public figure, I'm known for a lot of things, for better or worse there. But I think what I really would like to be known for is I've got 5 grandkids, and I just would like to be known by them as a granddad who really loved them.
Oh, I love
that's
that
so
answer.
sweet.
It's so sweet. It's a 4 answer.
Yeah. What, do you have a favorite quote? As of Enneagram 4, I have a hard time with favorites. So if you don't, that's fine. But maybe one of your favorite quotes.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm writing a book right now called Life After Doom that is about living in a world of ecological overshoot and all that entails. And there's a beautiful quote from Václav Havel, where Václav Havel, the Czech former president and poet, not often is a poet a president, maybe a 4 who was a president, I don't know. But Havel said, hope is not the belief that things will turn out the way you wish. Mm-hmm. Hope is the belief that some things are worth doing no matter how they turn out. That's a quote that's been meaning a lot to me lately.
Well, your other favorite quote is what I said earlier. So let's not forget. Let's not forget.
That's fresh.
Right. Yeah. You can put that in your book. All right. So who is your favorite married couple that one person in the couple is an Enneagram 8 and the other's an Enneagram 4? Who's your favorite?
Present company is definitely
done. Boom. That was not a step at all. That was an authentic, genuine answer from our new best friend, Brian.
That's right.
So, Brian, I know there's a plethora of ways. I know there's so many ways people can keep in touch with you. Throw it out there real quick. If there's your name of your new book to remind everybody, if there's Instagram handle, how do people continue to follow you?
Yeah. So the best thing is if you go to brianmclaren.net, there are all the links to Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and so on. And the new book is called Do I Stay Christian?
Yeah, so good.
Awesome.
Brian, we love you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for being a part of this today.
I'm so glad I got to meet you by Zoom and look forward to meeting in person sometime before too long.
We will. All right, listeners, thank y'all so much. We know that you heard something today that flipped your lid, and pretty sure you also heard something help you reconnect to who you really are. We'll see y'all next time.
Thank you for listening to Flip Your Lid with Kim Honeycutt. Please subscribe, rate, and share. You can find Kim on Facebook or Instagram at KBHoneycutt. To get an autographed copy of Kim's book, visit butyourmotherlovesyou.com. Remember, no matter what, treat yourself well today.